This is a video that I'm probably going to regret having had made because I'm going to give away the secrets to how I believe this year we're going to double revenue yet again with a novel approach to the bidding process for all of you landscape maintenance providers out there that are working with commercial properties and even residential properties. The same method and technology which no one is using. Literally, I'm the ninth person in the USA and probably the first person bold enough to actually make a video on how to use this new technology, which is completely breakthrough. And frankly, it's insane. I can't believe this exists. In fact, it's going to blow your mind. So let's get into this video today. And I'm going to show you what exactly we are going to do first to give you an outline of the purpose of the video. And then we'll go from there. All right, so first off, there's an old way of bidding. Now, who is this video for? This is for any landscape maintenance provider, be it commercial or residential. So if you are bidding properties, apartment complexes, hotels, maybe you're bidding out hospitals or HOAs, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. It's just different sizing and quantities. Now, there's an old way of doing this, which is very painful, very, very painful. And I'm sure you've experienced all these pains yourself. The endless high effort required to go walk the property. Maybe you're living in the Stone Age and you're still using a measuring wheel, or worse. Well, I guess this isn't worse, but it's almost just as bad, which is using Google Earth, which is tedious. And you got to go through and you got to do all this monkey business where you come in here, you find the property. And if you don't know how to do this, then that's in and of itself concerning. But let's say you're doing this and you're coming in here and you're using the manual measuring approach of clicking that button there and then bam, bam, bam. And then you get your output for your area and your perimeter. And oh my God, does it take forever? Okay, imagine doing this for every plot of grass on this property. It would take forever. And then you got to add them all up individually. 1396 plus 380.43, and you got to put all this in a G sheet, and oh my God, it takes forever. So how are you supposed to bid properties super fast at scale if you've got 100 of them? And let's say that your conversion rate is, because you're a terrible salesperson, let's say it's 10%. So you got to go walk 100 properties and do 100 of those takeoffs manually with Google Earth to get 10 wins for maybe $1,500 a month, plus all your cogs. And oh my God, it's a nightmare. Very high effort, extremely low reward. And maybe worse, you find yourself after sending all these bids out that take forever to produce, that you have to beg your clients for them to choose you because you have such a scarcity mindset, because you have such a scarcity of bids that you've sent out, right? It's tedious. It's enormously tedious. Maybe you have G sheets with calculations in them to spit out based on how many square footage of turf, how much you need to apply in the way of fertilizer, or how long it's going to take you hour-wise to do the aeration, blah, blah, blah. It takes forever. You feel like a commodity. Maybe you feel like a turd on the bottom of the property manager's boot, and you're absolutely powerless and you have no pipeline, minimal pipeline based on what you could have or should have. It's a nightmare. And worst case, or in the best case, you're getting the scraps of what the big players are leaving you that have greater bandwidth and resources to be able to deliver more bids faster because they have business developers and account managers and greater staffing. All right, so that's the old way. That's the stupid way. Now, this is how literally every landscape provider in America currently is doing this, with the exception of 8 other landscapers, as I'm the 9th in this country to be using this technology. So what is this new way? Well, imagine a world where you get to choose your clients. And what do I mean by that? Well, imagine you have such an insane output of intelligently bid properties for the maintenance that you could send out 10,000 estimates or bids for maintenance. And if you got 20% of them to come back, it would be still way more than if you only did 100 and had a 10% conversion rate. So 1,000 bids sent out, 10% conversion rate or 5% conversion rate, doing this through a new approach and new method and with a new technology, instead of doing it the old way where you're sending out maybe 100 bids and getting maybe 15%. The numbers are astronomically different, okay? So this is the new way. Now, what does this get you? Now, the reality is you can send out 1 million bids, and let's say if you're anything like my market here in Denver, most of the bidding happens between, say, September through November. The stragglers you can pick up maybe through late January, early February, but that's really it. That's the bidding window for maintenance for these commercial properties. But imagine that you sent out so many bids to so many potential clients that in your bidding conversations in the very beginning, when you're talking to them, you can set the precipice of, hey, so we have a lot of demand for our service. So I'm happy to give you numbers for what we could do for your property, but it's first come, first serve. And once we hit our capacity, that's it. And we can't take you on. So that solves another problem. Actually, 2 problems. Number one is it empowers you to be the one choosing your clients. Okay, imagine having the power to choose your clients. And secondly, it drives urgency. A lot of these property managers drag their feet. They delay. They spend months, it seems like, to make a decision. And oftentimes, because you're just a commodity of being a landscaper, there's no way for you to really drive any sort of real urgency when talking to them. And this gives you a way to do that, right? And you can say it with conviction because you know that with this new approach, which again is going to allow you to bid out 10x, if not 100x more properties, that you're going to have your pick of the litter come the start of the season. And you can tell them no because you have the power to say no as well. And with that, imagine instead of having to go into Google Earth and spend hours or worse, using a measuring wheel to measure the size of turf grass and other patches of mulch and rock beds and the like, you could do this in your sleep, literally automatically while naked in bed. Okay? Yeah, literally. And I'll show you that here in a moment. And what if beyond that, you could actually completely eliminate the manual tedium and the BS of all the Google Earth madness? Well, so there is a way, and I think I cracked the code on how to do it. Now, some of the other benefits that you're going to get from this new approach that I'll show you here momentarily is that you, the owner of the business, don't have to continue doing the bidding. You can actually give this to somebody else that's a lower paid, bubbly type person that connects well with people, that has maybe a high EQ and can connect. And all they got to do is capture basic data. And actually in the future, even that'll be automated. The other benefit of this new approach is that it's going to allow you to systematize all of it. So no more of this problem where you have 10 estimators going to 10 different properties that are the exact same size, or rather the same property 10 different times with 10 different estimators, all coming back with 10 different prices for that same property. Those days are gone. The variance in pricing is gone. And you can reliably build in your gross profit margin for every one of these properties with the predetermined, preset GPM on every single bid. Wouldn't that be nice? And the final advantage of this new approach is that once you make these investments in the stuff that I'm going to point out here, and yes, there's an investment cost and it costs money, and it turns out everything costs money to make money, but there are some initial upfront costs. But the beauty of this is once you have the data, it's permanent, short of any sort of construction where they adjust the sizing of the mulch beds or whatever, okay? So massive, massive advantage that this new process, method, and approach gives you when bidding on commercial and really even residential properties. So are you ready to see what the hell this framework is? Okay, you are? Perfect. Okay, so I'm not going to give you the tactics per se, but I'm going to give you the macro strategy and give you a teaser as to how this actually shakes out. And I'll show you as well how to do it. Well, high level, let's say. There's not enough time in this video to get into all the how. So the first thing is whenever you're choosing a market to go after, let's say it's a segment of the apartment space or the hotel space or whatever niche you want to go after, it's really important to understand that niche really well, mostly so that you can understand how the properties and that vertical plays and how they decide on their landscaper, right? If you don't understand the game of how a property manager interfaces with the regional manager and how the regional interfaces with the ownership group and how the ownership group is interfacing with the management group, for example, in the apartment game, it's going to be much more difficult to navigate that terrain because you're going to have to learn the nuances of each industry, their lingo, blah, 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 blah. So I would advocate for, as a starting point, that you pick a single target, a single niche that you want to go after. And that can be any niche. It could be the vertical of hospitals, although those are generally fairly large properties. It could be the vertical of hotels. Maybe it's 5-star hotels. Maybe it's 4 stars. Maybe it's 3 stars. Pick a vertical where you believe that you can win and your team can deliver the value that you're after. Now, to actually get that target data, let's talk about that real quick. To actually get the target data that you need in order to pursue these people, you need to invest in some sort of, tech. Okay. Now, I'm not affiliated with these guys at this moment, maybe in the future, but as of this very moment, there's no affiliation. But this is to show you what you could do in terms of getting access to a big pool of data that can ultimately spit out something like this, where you have all the data for every property and every potential customer in your vertical. Okay. And then from here, you can take this data and do a whole bunch of magical things with it to prune out the leads that you do not want to call or email or contact or even do drop-ins with, or any sort of other pipe bomb type engagement where you're hitting them from different channels, LinkedIn or whatever. And you have to start with the data. So this is the first step. Now, if you're going to take this a step further, you can take this and dump this into something like Badger mapping, where you can then route your reps or yourself to do physical in-person stops and do that in an intelligent manner with route planning. Okay. So that's the target side of things. Now with the messaging, what do I mean by messaging? Well, oftentimes we walk into a place and we go in and they say, hey, you want to talk to the manager? Cool. What's this regarding? And if you don't have something intelligent to say that's primed and prepped and practiced, like, hey, my name's John. I'm the owner of a landscaping company here in town, and we are laser focused on working with properties like yours that suffer from lack of communication with the previous landscaper and are looking for a 5-star service at a 2-star cost, whatever the hell the message might be. If you're not prepped, primed, and practiced by doing role plays with a partner, a friend, a colleague, a wife, a husband, whatever, you're setting yourself up for failure when you go into these properties to have these conversations, right? Because everything should be scripted. In the same way that you're looking at this mind map here, which is unpacking this video, in just the same way, your conversation is just like that. It's predictable. And if you have responses to what they're saying or could say, you're much more likely to crush, as the kids say, those meetings that you have with your prospective clients. So what does a messaging stack look like as an example? Well, here's one example. Now, this is pretty dated, but this is one that we've memorized and we use ourselves, where every time we go in, we have a conversation, be it a cold call or a cold drop-in, we'll say the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over again. That then allows us to actually deliver the message in a very, what would you say, a very programmatic, predetermined way where I can just then focus on the tone of which I'm saying the thing, rather than having to figure out what the hell do I say here. Okay. So for example, if I cold call somebody, I would just say, hey, John, you guys are obviously in love with your landscaper, right? And have no intention of changing going into next year. Is that right? And then he's of course going to say, no, I hate my landscaper. I would love another bid, right? And it's such an easy way to open up a conversation there. So it's really helpful to get something mapped out in docs like this, where you can have your questions, your responses to different blockers that you might run into. And notice how if I change this to header 3, bam, now it pops up here on my outline. So when I'm having a conversation with a potential buyer on the phone or whatever, or customer, and I find myself getting stuck, I can just jump in here and respond with whatever I've already written out. Now, ideally, you end up in a position like myself where these are all memorized. And I don't have to worry about what the hell I'm going to say. I just have to focus on what the hell I'm going, or how I'm going to say it rather. Super, super helpful. So that's a messaging bit here. Now the channel. Okay, so what do I mean by channel? Now, one of the biggest mistakes I've made in growing our company that my fiance and I run to date is that we haven't always picked and been committed to just picking one channel. Now, a channel is what? It could be in person, it could be phone, it could be email, it could be LinkedIn, whatever. Now, why do we say one channel? Well, until you get to a target like, say, 500,000 or maybe 1 million, it's pretty difficult to start or to master different channels. And what do I mean by that? If you're walking into a property and you're having a discussion with somebody in person, there's a whole additional set of complexities that go into that interaction and how you present yourself and the like that make that exchange more difficult than just, say, having a phone call where you're just practicing and managing and mastering the art of the call. In person is a different game. You have your body positioning to deal with, the positive attitude that you show on your face, what you're wearing, etc. So there's additional complexity there. So often it's easier to just take one channel, own it, and radically commit to it until you get to a certain predetermined goal or target, i.e. $1 million in revenue. So for us, the channel that we like to use is the phone because it's easy, because I just load up a list from my target set that I predetermined up here earlier when I said, you know what, I'm going to choose the vertical of apartments, multifamily apartments that are 4-star rated and above. And I scrubbed those leads out of my data here. And I uploaded those leads into this power dialer that then allows me to dial at scale, call after call after call, 60 to 80 dials in an hour. So I get way more coverage for my time than if I were to go knock on doors manually. This has been a super weapon, the Iron Man suit, if you will, for our business. Now, once I get the person on the phone, I need to be thinking about, well, okay, it's possible that they may say, hey, the timing's wrong. And that's fine. If that happens, there's ways to mitigate the failure to follow up, because you got to remember, in selling, which is what you're doing if you're running a business and selling anything, be it landscape services or otherwise, you're a salesperson. You're a salesperson until you hit at least 1 million and can hire somebody to do the selling for you. Them are the facts, and I hate to break your heart, but that's the way it is. So you have to manage or master the art of timing. And that's really just a different way of saying following up. And so using a tool like Phone Burner allows you to make those dials on a predetermined future date in the scheduling that has inside of the software. Now, this all sounds complicated, but don't worry, I'll make videos on each of these tools independently to show you how you can actually do that. In fact, inside Landscape Lords, you'll see courses that cover these tools in depth on how to use them for your business. But this is just a high-level overview to show you how everything can connect and the dots can sync up. So then once I get them on the phone and I get them into a position where they say, you know what, yes, I would love to meet, I would love to chat with you and figure out what you guys can do for my business, I say, great. I get them to a meeting. Okay, so here I have my Calendly link, and my promise to them is that I can get them a bid or get what I need from them in order to put the bid for their maintenance together in literally just 14 minutes. Okay, just 14 minutes. Now, how do I do that? Well, we haven't gotten there yet. I'm going to show you the strategy for the way in which I do that, but I won't exactly show you how to do that just yet, but I will in other videos because there's not enough time to get into all the weeds here. But this is just an overview. So then I booked them for a call, and this is the critical distinction that I make from my business from the rest of the pack. I don't meet them in person yet, okay? Notice how this is a Google Meet. Now, why might I be meeting them in Google first before I go meet them in person? Can you guess? Okay, here's a couple of clues. Number one, I don't work with every customer in the city. I won't do it. If I get the sense that you're going to be difficult to work with, I will refuse to work with you. So a Google Meet is a very low effort way to connect with somebody initially, to feel them out, see how they can comply with things like, hey, can you show up to a call? Because if they aren't willing to do that, they're not actually serious about getting their property bid out for maintenance for the next season. So it's a bit of a social compliance test. So it's very important that you take control. They come to you initially so that you can establish the frame correctly out of the gate of who is the figure of authority, which is one of the pillars of influence. Again, another topic for another day on Cialdini's pillars of influence, authority being one of them. But this also gives you the ability to determine, do you like them? Do they like you? Is there chemistry there? Is it a good match? Because if it's not worth driving out there in some cases in my business, 40 minutes away to potentially be stood up. No way in hell. So we use Google Meet, and that's the first meeting. Now you might be asking, well, how the hell do I give them a bid in just 14 minutes if I'm just doing a Google Meet? That seems insane. How the hell could I do that? And that's where the secret sauce is that I still have yet to show you, is that this, again, is going to blow your mind. It's the only technology like this, to my knowledge, in the country, and I'm the 9th person on the planet to have access to it. Okay? So bear with me. I promise you we'll get there. All right. So once I've got them on the Google Meet, you might be asking, well, what the hell do I do? Like, what's the process once I have them on the phone? Well, at this point, we've already made a list of the clients that we want to talk to. We have, where are all my notes? They're all gone. That's exciting. Okay, we'll continue on. So at this point, once I've got them to commit to a meeting, a Google Meet, and they show up for the meeting, what I do then at that point is I have a predetermined outline for what I do on every call. And it's mapped out in this process here. Okay. And so all I have to do is, before the call starts, I'm going to pre-input data here into the Asana form, and I just run through the questions. Hey, so for example, John, it's good to connect today. I've got, like I said, just that 14-minute window, then we can jump off. So let me just get right to the point and ask you, what happened last season and what's preventing you from wanting to work with them next year? And oftentimes they'll give you all of the reasons why their current provider was terrible, they didn't work well, and da-da-da-da-da. And you can just note all these challenges here. And why would you want to do that? Well, when you go to present the bid to them, you can summarize what the challenges were from the last season, and every little 1% incremental advantage that you can get by way of reminding them of their pain from the current season will enable you to most likely win that deal, right? Every little 1% stacks up in your favor. And questions like this, you might not, they might not be that helpful to ask, frankly, because you're going to see with the technology that we've come across, you actually don't need to ask them what their budget is, because it doesn't really matter, because the price is what the price is, and you can maybe flex up or down depending on the type of client and what you know about them. But sometimes they'll share what their budget is and what they were paying in the previous season, just to give you a reference point. It's not enormously helpful, but you can grab that and put that in the form here if you wanted to. Now, this question here, or questions like this, where I'm asking them, hey, so what capital improvement projects do you have on the horizon for next year? Why am I to ask that? Well, the reason I'm asking that is I want to gauge how much opportunity there is with this property manager to sell them bigger projects that will drive more revenue and greater profit going into next year, right? Because if I have 100 properties that I'm managing and none of them have capital projects on the horizon for next year, where we can eke out $50, $150, $200,000, then it's probably not that interesting for me to want to take on, because my install team won't have any work, and it's just going to be the maintenance guys running around cutting grass all day long with no real upside potential. So one of the things that I'm looking for is, as I am assessing who I want to work with, I use this as a filtering question. And you should too. You should ask them questions like, what else is on the horizon? What does ownership want to see different going into next year in terms of improvements and the like, so that you can decide if you want to take them on or not. Okay. Other helpful things like the bid due date are helpful for you to maintain the correct prioritization for each property and the bidding that you do. And these other things as well are really just designed to help you self-select or select them out or disqualify them. This is one of the D's in the 5D sales framework that I'll teach you guys in a different video. Is you luxury, if you're in demand, of choosing your clients and disqualifying people that are not a good fit for you. And again, we'll cover the 5D sales framework. That's a novel framework that no one talks about, in a different video. And you can see here how a question like this, which is, hey, do you guys allow irrigators to come through and perform services up to a certain amount, typically $500, or do you want to see quotes for every little repair before we do any repair? And let me tell you, if you're going to work with the client that's going to nitpick every single dime of investment that they have to make in order to make the improvements or just to maintain the property, run for the hills. And further, if you're working with the landscape, a former landscaper, now gone property manager that thinks they know everything about landscaping and wants to nitpick and micromanage you, you should also run for the hills, right? These are the sorts of disqualifying type questions that you should ask and suss out and sniff out for in your discovery phase in the beginning in Google Meet so that you don't take on nightmarish clients, okay? And if you're using LMN, this is where you can input what you anticipate the hours allowed for based on your just visual of the property. But as you'll find here momentarily, this isn't actually that helpful because the new technology that we're using does all that for you. Okay, now, are you ready to see the new technology that is going to blow your mind and make it such that you'll never have to walk a property again? Now, you still should to verify a few things and access points and the like, but it's going to significantly decrease, like astronomically decrease, the amount of time it takes you to bid properties for maintenance. And by the way, it's a one-time investment per property such that you'll have the data forever, and anytime you need to do enhancements, mulch refreshes, rock refreshes, or whatever, you've got the data already. And so your latency for getting bids out for different types of projects goes way down. So would you like to see what that tool is? Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into exactly how to use it, but I'm going to show you what it does. And I'm going to paint a very rosy picture for you on what you could do with it if you invested in it too. All right, so here it is. So this is the new type of technology that other providers have had around for a while, where generally what has been the case to date is that you put in an address and it'll spit out how many square feet of turf grass and there are on a given property, and you can see that visually inside of the what's called takeoff data here. Now, where this gets really, really interesting is here. Gone are the old days of me needing to manually tally and search, or rather do the math on what I need to charge for each property based on my GPMs, the square footage of each area, the total man hours that I anticipate, and the like. This is now all done for you with the luxury of being able to adjust things like timing for travel, cleanup costs, and the like. And at the end of this, I get one figure for all the pricing that I can then take and export into a document like my landscape maintenance proposal template. And then I could expedite this process of sending it out to the client in literally a day tops. It just depends on how long it takes the software to run the analysis. And then I can send this to the client via email. And then without even needing a CRM, I can manage the follow-up of each of these bids that have been sent out with Gmail, just through simple labeling. It is completely insane, and it has bought back hours, hundreds of hours of my time. And this approach will save you just as much time if you're interested in joining the new way of landscaping and running out the bids for these properties that will allow you to outbid the competition by an order of magnitude, because you'll get way more volume out with no additional staff and save your sanity. Now, this is just the first piece. This is just the first piece of how I'm building, for those of you that are interested, I am building a pathway to financial freedom for service-based business owners. And this is a high-level overview of what that looks like, where you come in, you pick a service, you choose one offer, one vertical, one channel until you're over $1 million. We go through all the ways of setting your messaging up for your sales team or yourself, the strategy of running the meetings, the ways to figure out your pricing, this innovative new novel sales framework that'll blow your mind when you start to apply it, and all the ways to outsource your pain and operations, tool usage, AI utilization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for now, if you're looking for a community of fellow landscapers, this is a brand new community that I just put together that's going to attract the best in the business, in the commercial landscape and residential landscape maintenance game, called Landscape Lords. And inside of this community, I'm going to have exclusive content by people that are, well, the names that you'll recognize in the landscape game, and other resources like templates for SOPs, templates for your sales process, access to resources and tools at a discount, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that you can't get anywhere else. And I would love to see you inside of that Facebook group. Again, it's Landscape Lords, the Facebook group, exclusive community, invite only, and you have to be accepted in order to get into it, to get all the goodies. So with that, happy bidding, and make sure to remember that anything that the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve.